What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Cream Reviews, and on today's show, we have a Magic the Gathering Commander deck tech for Fire Lord Zuko. This guy's crazy. The avatar set's crazy. Let's see what we got going on. Fire Lord Zuko is our commander. He is a 3 mana in the Mardu colors for a 2/4 legendary human noble ally. He has Firebending X, where X is his power. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, or whenever a permanent you control enters from exile, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So there's 3 ways to go with this. The Firebending X, we want to take advantage of producing all that mana. We want to cast spells from exile or permanents entering from exile to put +1/+1 counters on our whole team. So we want to take advantage of the +1/+1 counters, and we want to cast spells from exile. The new cards from the avatar set that are in this deck, we have Firebending Student, which is a 1/2 red creature for 1 and a red. It has prowess, and it also has Firebending X. So in that respect, it's just a redundant copy of our commander. It's a little cheaper, and we can profit by putting the +1/+1 counters as we're casting spells from exile onto this, making it bigger, making it Firebend for more. We have Azula on the Hunt. It is also a Firebender, Firebending 2. Whenever Azula attacks, lose 1 life and create a clue token. So we can create the clue token and then immediately crack it with the Firebending mana that we're creating. We have Zuko Exiled Prince, which has Firebending 3, so it's another Firebender, but it's also a way to exile cards, and you can play them this turn. So you can do this multiple times if you have multiple mana. We have Ozai the Phoenix King, is a 7/7 for 2 double black and double red. It has Trample, Firebending 4, Haste. If you would lose unspent mana, it becomes red. So you'll notice in the deck that there is a lot of creatures that will let you keep your Firebending mana into your pool as steps and phases in, so you can use it later on. And then if Ozai has flying and indestructible as long as there's 6 or more unspent mana. So that actually doesn't take very long, because there's 4 you'll get from attacking with Ozai on the turn it comes down, and then you have your commander, all the other Firebenders, etc. We have Avatar's Wrath, not really flavorful in the deck, but you choose up to 1 target creature. You'll normally choose your commander, and then you airbend all other creatures. Until your next turn, opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hand. So the way I envision this is, if you still have your board developed but you're behind in the game, you can cast Avatar's Wrath, choose your commander, and then you can cast the spells from exile by paying their airbending costs before your opponents can rebuild. And that is casting a spell from exile, and that will put +1/+1 counters on your whole team. We have Zuko's Conviction. This is the only graveyard-centric card in the deck. It was a last-minute add when I realized I didn't really have a way to get valuable stuff back from the graveyard. It's a 1 black kicker for 4. It's instant speed. You can return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If the spell was kicked, instead put it on the battlefield tapped. So you can either use it as a raise dead, or you can use it as a reanimation spell. And it's Zuko named, so fits in the deck. And then the land here is Fire Nation Palace. It enters tapped unless you control basic land. We do run quite a bit of basics. It adds a red mana. And then for 1 red tap, you can give a creature Firebending 4. And Firebending stacks. So not only, if you use this on your commander, will it have Firebending X, where X is its power, but it will also gain the Firebending 4, and it's just a great way to keep stockpiling mana, so on and so forth. This category is, we want to have payoffs for casting spells from exile, and we also want to have ways to cast spells from exile. So this is Inti. This is a 2/2 legendary human knight For 1 and a red. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on an attacking creature and it gains trample. Whenever you discard, exile the top card and you may play it until your next end step. So this not only synergizes with our commander because it will let us exile cards and play them, but it also adds additional +1/+1 counters just like our commander. We have Pia Nalar. She is a Boros 2/3. Thopters you control have haste, and whenever a land from exile, or whenever you play a land from exile, or you cast a spell from exile, you get a 1/1 colorless Thopter creature token with flying. So as we're casting spells from exile, we're going to get more and more Thopters, and it's just going to add board presence. Our commander is going to put +1/+1 counters on those Thopters, so it can get out of hand really fast. Ryan Sinclair is a 2/2 legendary human for 2 and a red. Whenever it attacks, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land. You may cast it as long as it has mana value less than or equal to his power. So theoretically here, we want to play Sinclair. We want to put +1/+1 counters on him, and then the more his power builds over the game, the more powerful, expensive spells that we'll be able to cast with him. Flameskull is a 3/1 flyer that can't block for 1 and 2 red. And the reason this is in the deck is just it is a repeatable way for us to keep exiling cards and casting them. You can just cast a Flameskull over and over. When it dies, exile it, and then exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play one of those cards. So if you don't like the other option that you exiled, you can just continue to play the Flameskull from exile. It's going to trigger your commander over and over. Pretty sweet. Headed Zuko, Devouring Chaos, is a 4/4 legendary ogre demon for 3 and a black. You can pay a black, sacrifice a creature, and scry 2, and then you can pay 2 red, tap, exile the top card of your library. You may play the exile card this turn. When you exile a non-land this way, it deals damage equal to the exiled card's mana value to a target, any target. So you can even go face if you exile something huge. This just helps us keep churning. You can sacrifice a creature that's about to die to a removal spell to scry 2, so you can set up your next exile. It just does it all. Urabrask is a 4/4 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor for 3 and 2 red. It has haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top card, and you can play it this turn, so that's good to just keep churning through. It also hurts your opponents at the beginning of your opponent's upkeep the next time they would draw a card. So normally during their draw phase, they just exile the top card and they can play it instead. So this is good to shut down your opponent's top decks. If they really want it, they have to cast it right then and there, but if they don't, then they are just going to end up losing it in the long run. Plurg and Nasari, at the beginning of your upkeep, each player exiles the top card, so this is a good way to play your opponent's spells from exile. An opponent chooses a non-land card exiled this way. You may cast up to 2 spells from among other cards. So you're just casting them for free without paying their mana cost, and that's going to trigger the commander. And like I said, a good way to not only cast stuff off the top of your deck, but also cast your opponent's spells. Atali Primal Storm, 6/6 legendary Elder Dinosaur for 4 and 2 red. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top card of each player's library, and then you can cast any number of spells exiled this way without paying their mana cost. So not only casting off of your library, but also your opponent's, and it's going to trigger Zuko. Hoarding Broodlord. I have been looking for a deck that this card will fit in, and I think this is the one. 5 and 3 black for a Convoke Flying 7/6 Dragon. Whenever it enters, you tutor for a card. You search your library for a card, exile it face down, and then as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it, and spells that you cast from exile have Convoke. So not only will this, if you exile something game winning, will it make it cheaper because you can convoke it out, but you just really get to choose your game winner at will and be able to cast it. Fires of Mount Doom. When it enters, you deal 2 damage to a creature an opponent controls, and you destroy all equipment, so that's good. But what it's really here for is 2 and a red, exile the top card of your library. You can play it this turn. So it's a good use of your Firebending mana. If you just have 3 Firebending mana that's going to go away at the end of combat, you just put it into this. You can exile the top card, and then when you play a card this way, this will deal 2 damage to each player, including you, but if you're on the offensive, it will give you greater reach, and hopefully you can close out the game. Tavern Brawler. Commander creatures you control have, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. If this the creature, so your commander, so it would be Zuko, gets +X+0, where X is the exiled card's mana value, and then you may play it this turn. So it's a good way on your upkeep to increase Zuko's power so that the Firebending X will be more, and then you'll be able to cast the spell that you exile. Theater of Horrors. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. So these cards don't go away during your turn. Yes, so these cards don't go away. And that last ability, 3 and a red, Theater of Horrors deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So you can filter the Firebending mana into that and deal damage, and that will let you cast the spells from exile. But it can also, in the late game, or maybe you have many Firebenders out, you can just deal massive damage to the table. So I think this is a good card for this deck. Showdown at the Scalds. This does 2 things that our commander wants to do. So on Chapter 1, you exile the top 4 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So you get them for a full turn cycle. And then Chapter 2 and 3 are whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So it does 2 things that our commander wants to do. It lets you play cards from exile, and it puts +1/+1 counters on your creatures. Stolen Strategy. This is another good way to cast spells off your opponent's library in addition to your own. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards, and you may spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. Just a good card, lets you cast your opponent's spells. Outrageous Robbery is X and 2 black for an instant. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library face down. You can look at those, and then for as long as they remain exiled, you can play them. And then you can spend mana as though it were any color. So this is an instant, so it also, as long as you add 2 black to your Firebending mana, you can get a lot of cards off your opponent's library. Maybe find some answers if you're behind. Commune with Lava, again, another instant. Exile the top X cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Also a good use of your Firebending mana. You can go ahead and go to combat, attack, get the Firebending mana, and then cast this. And you'll have other spells that you'll be able to cast. And we have Chaos Wand. This is a 3 mana artifact for 4 and tap. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom in a random order. So this is good for like if a player is really ahead and you're looking for a removal spell or something like that. You can try to get it off your opponent's library. Also casting a spell from exile. So Zuko will put a +1/+1 counter on your whole team. But we're casting spells from exile, and we're putting +1/+1 counters on our creatures. What payoffs can we do to make those +1/+1 counters count? So we have Market Back Walker is a XX00 artifact creature construct. It enters with X +1/+1 counters. You can pay 4 and put a +1/+1 counter on it, so it's a good use of your Firebending mana because you can do this at instant speed. And then when Market Back Walker dies, you draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. So even if you get board wiped, hopefully you're getting something out of this. Axe Guard Artisan. whenever you put a +1/+1 counter on it, you create a treasure. This is only once per turn, but you get the treasures, you get the mana fixing, you get the ramp. It's good stuff. Same here with Dusk Legion Duelist. It's a 2/2 with Vigilance for 1 and a white. And whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are on this, you draw a card, but only once each turn. So you cast a spell from exile. With this out, Zuko will put +1/+1 counters on your whole team, and you'll get to draw a card. Abzan Falconer. You'll have creatures with +1/+1 counters on them. This will give it flying. So Abzan Falconer, definitely a card I like to put in all my +1/+1 counter decks. And then we have Thundering Raiju, 2 and double red for a haste 3/3. Whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, and then Thundering Raiju will deal X damage to each opponent. So that's very good reach, where X is the number of modified creatures you control, and you will, if you have a wide board and you're casting spells from exile with Firelord Zuko out, you will have a wide board of modified creatures, and that will really do a lot of damage. But we're making all this firebending mana. How are we going to retain it when we don't have anything instant speed to use on it or any mana sinks? We're going to use cards like Electro Assaulting Battery. Is a 1 and double red, 2/3 with flying. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you add a red, and then whenever Electro leaves the battlefield, you pay X, and when you do, he deals X damage to target player. So you can store up your firebending mana and then use it for a big spell, or you can just wait until Electro leaves the battlefield, and then you can deal a lot of damage to a player that may be removing it. Same here with Ashling Flame Dancer. You don't lose red mana as steps and phases in, so you see the theme. This has Magecraft, but honestly, it's just a 4 mana 4/4 that's in the deck to help us retain our Leyline Tyrant. Is also here for the same reason, and it's similar to Electro. Whenever this creature dies, you may pay any amount of red mana, and then whenever you do, it deals that much damage to any target. So this can pick off creatures too, but it's a great way to store up your firebending mana. And then if you have this guy, you know, you're never going to lose it, and it's a 4/4 flyer for 4. It's pretty good. And then Braid of Fire, I'm trying this out in the deck because same with Firebending. On Community of Upkeep, you will add a red for each, what is this called? Age counter. For each age counter on this. So in the early turns, if you play this early, yeah, you probably won't have one of your creatures established that doesn't let you lose red mana, but in combination with them, you know, you can store a lot of mana very quick, especially in the later turns of the game. And then if we're storing mana, we definitely want to have payoffs for that. So we're going to run Exsanguinate. It's X and 2 black. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain life equal to the amount lost this way. So if we're stockpiling all this mana, we can just cast a big Exsanguinate and hopefully end the game. Same thing for Aggravated Assault. If we have any of the guys that will let us stockpile our mana, and Zuko's power is 5 or greater, in theory, as long as Zuko can get through, and they don't have removal for it, you can take infinite combats all day long. You just put the mana into this, and it's GG's. Same with Hellkite Charger. This is a 2-card combo with Firelord Zuko. It's a 6 mana 5/5 flying haste dragon, and whenever it attacks, you can pay 5 and 2 red, and if you do, you untap all creatures you control, and you can take another combat step. So same with the Aggravated Assault. As long as Zuko has 7 power, if those are the only 2 cards, and Zuko can get through unblocked each time, and Hellkite Charger doesn't die, you can just keep going. You can just take infinite combats over and over and over again. So those are pretty much the big win conditions in the deck. Now we've got some meat and potato stuff, starting with the removal. This is Vandal Blast. Destroy target artifact you don't control, but if you overload it, you get to destroy all artifacts that you don't control. And our artifacts that we don't have that many, but all of our ramp, most of our ramp, no, I think all of our ramp except for the firebending, and that's not really ramp anyway, but it is artifacts. So we want to protect our artifacts, and we want to make sure that we have answers for problem artifacts. Feed the Swarm. I really like this card because it's versatile. It can destroy a creature or an enchantment at sorcery speed, and then you lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. But I like how versatile it is and how cheap it is, so it's in the deck. Path to Exile, the tried and true. If you're running white, of course you're going to run Path to Exile for creature removal, as well as Swords to Plowshares. I got the Jesus one here for extra points. It's just the only one that I had available. But yeah, so these are commander staples that will deal with any creature, no matter if it's indestructible or what, just for a drawback of either a land or giving your opponent some life. So I think that's a pretty good trade-off. You Find Some Prisoners is one of my favorite cards. Either you choose one, you either destroy an artifact. So again, artifact removal, really important. You know, we want to keep our opponent's problem artifacts off while keeping ours safe. But also, you can choose to exile the top 3 cards of an opponent's library, and this is another good way to be able to cast spells from your opponent's library. So I really like that mode, and when we do that, it will trigger our commander and put a +1/+1 counter on each of our creatures. Chaos Warp, the tried and true red catch-all. They shuffle target permanent into the library and then reveal the top card. If it's a permanent, it goes on the battlefield. So it's just a great way in red to deal with any threat. We also have Generous Gift, which is very similar. Destroys any permanent, and then that permanent's controller gets a 3/3 elephant, but normally that is a fair trade-off. We can even get cheeky and use it on our stuff and just get a free 3/3. One of my favorite cards, Kazul's Fury. This is a fling. In addition to cast this, we have to sack a creature, but it will deal damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power, and it's a land on the backside. So in the early game, it can just be a land drop. It can produce a red. But in the late game, if we have a huge creature that's about to get removed, or we just need that little bit of reach at the end of the game, we can sacrifice a creature and deal all the damage to our opponent. That's why it's in the removal section. Return to Dust, I really like. 2 and 2 white for an instant. Exile target artifact or enchantment, but if it casts this during the main phase, you get to exile 2 artifacts and or enchantments. So I like this. It's exile. I always say decks need a way to deal with a hasty Blightsteel Colossus, and this is the one in the deck. It is a little expensive. I know it's gone out of favor, but I like old commander staples, and it fits good in this deck. Inevitable Betrayal. 1 and Mardu colors. Can't be countered. You exile a target non-land permanent, so again, exile removal for any non-land permanent, which is great, and then the controller of that permanent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So, you know, it's just good catch-all removal. It's in our colors, you know, might as well give it a shot. Delayed Fireball. This is a Wrath, but it has a benefit when we cast it from exile, so it deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control, but if it was cast from exile, it deals 5 damage instead, and you can foretell it for 4 and 2 red, but there's a lot of ways in this deck to just exile it off the top, and we'll be able to pay the 1 and 2 red, so we don't even really have to pay the foretell cost to get the big benefit of it, and I think it's just a great card. Blasphemous Act, of course, the tried and true board wipe in red. It costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield. You know, we only really want to cast this if things are going bad. We want to be developing our board, but if you know, our stuff is constantly getting removed and we just can't, and the opponents are gaining too much advantage on us, we just want a total reset. We can cast this for cheap, and then we hopefully can rebuild on that same turn. So that's why I really like Blasphemous Act. And then we have some protection here. Dawn's Truce. This is just 1 and a white. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So it's just a great way to protect from cards like Chandra's Ignition and stuff like that, so that they can't target you specifically. Or you can just use it to dodge spot removal. And then if the gift was promised, so you can gift a card, they also gain indestructible. So you can also set it up to where it will protect from a destruction board wipe. And then we have Lightning Greaves, tried and true. It's just 2 mana. It gives the equipped creature haste and shroud. So we have a lot of creatures. If they don't have haste, we want to give them haste. We have flyers. And then we just have important pieces that we want to give shroud to so that the opponent can't use spot removal on them. Now we have the ramp. 12 pieces of ramp I've found is the number. We have 50 total mana in the deck, I believe. So, of course, we run Soul Ring, tried and true. Wayfarer's Bauble. We are running quite a few basics because we're running a budget mana base, but Wayfarer's Bauble on turn 1, crack it on turn 2. Ensure that we have all our colors because our commander is 3 different colors, so we just want to make sure that we're on plan. Of course, we have the Arcane Signet that adds all the colors. We have all 3 talismans in here. If we don't need the colored pips, we can just use it for the colorless mana, but it's a good way to fix our mana. So we have the Boros Talisman, the Orzhov Talisman, and the Rakdos Talisman. Look at that sick art. Bonus points for that. And then we have the Signets. I love running the Signets in 3 colored decks because it will fix the mana. Maybe you don't have the right color pips that you need. You just filter one of those into the Signet and it will produce 2 colors. So you got the Orzhov Signet, got the Rakdos Signet, and got the Boros Signet. So those are auto includes. We have Ornithopter of Paradise. This is a 2 mana mana dork. It has flying. It's a 0/2, but it adds any color to our mana pool. So early in the game, that's going to be really useful to us. But later in the game, if we're casting spells from exile with Firelord Zuko out, we're going to stack +1/+1 counters on this thing, and we're going to have a big flyer that can get in. Many times I have lost to a Birds of Paradise with a lot of counters on it, and this same thing, just stack counters on it, make it a great attacker, and you can win games with it. Liquid Metal Torque, we run all that artifact removal, like I was saying, in the removal section. So not only does this add a colorless, but I think the better mode on this is you can turn any non-land permanent into an artifact, and then you can use that artifact removal on it. So that's why it's in here, even though it only adds colorless. It's pretty cheeky. Mardu Monument, whenever it enters, you can search for a basic mountain, plains, or swamp. So I have been loving these monuments in the 3 color decks, in the wedge color pairings, because I don't think the shard pairings have these yet. But so useful to just play this onto, get the color we're missing. It can be later in the game. We can just use this as a land drop later on. Maybe we don't have one, so we cast this for 2 mana, get a land, make a land drop, play something else. You can pay 2 and Mardu mana and tap this and sacrifice it to create 3 1/1 red warrior creature tokens. They gain menace and haste until end of turn, so this is also a good way to build a wide board. While we have Zuko out, we can put +1/+1 counters on these warriors. They don't go away at end of turn, unlike the other mobilized tokens. So yeah, we can just build a wide board with this after it's already searched for a land. These monuments are just so good. Like, I really like them in decks. And then we have the tried and true Solemn Simulacrum. Whenever he comes in, search your library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. He's a 2/2 for 4, but when he dies, you draw a card. Solemn, auto include, commander stable, one of my favorite cards. Love this guy. And then here's the lands. We have run 38 total lands. One is a MDFC, so it's a land on the backside. We have the Fire Nation Palace, and then in addition to that, we're running the tried and true Command Tower. We're running the Path to Ancestry. We do run quite a few humans in the deck, but for the most part, this is just a comes into play tapped land that will produce all of our colors. But if we do cast a human, a noble, or an ally, we will get that Scry 1, and that is actually very good for knowing what's on top of our library, because we are going to be exiling the top card of our library and trying to play it. So just some gamesmanship there. Exotic Orchard, not always not always something that will produce your colors, but 9 times out of 10 in a 3-color deck, you'll get at least one of your colors from Exotic Orchard. So it's an auto include. Nomad Outpost, this would normally be the Triome. I just don't have an extra I have a 5-color deck that has all the triomes in it, but the triome would be so much better because it has the basic land types, even though it does intertap, and then it also has cycling. Cycling, as you'll see here in a few, is a good use of your firebending mana because you're going to lose it at the end of combat if you don't have one of those mana retainers. So the cycling would be so good, but for right now, this is a budget mana base, and we're going to be running the Nomad Outpost. Shattered Landscape. This just adds a colorless, but you can sack it and get a basic of one of your 3 types onto the battlefield tap. So it's good in the early game. And then it has cycling for Orzhov. You can't use your firebending mana for this cycling because you have to add a white and a black to it. But, you know, it's still not a bad top deck because you can just cash it in for another card. So we're going to run it. We have the Rogue's Passage, which is one of my favorite utility lands of all time. So many games won with Rogue's Passage. It adds a colorless, of course, but you can pay that 4 mana, tap it, and target creature can't be blocked this turn, which is a great use of firebending mana. If you have 4 firebending mana, you can just pump it into Rogue's Passage, and you can make any one of those guys unblockable before blocks, because the firebending mana trigger will go off in the declare attacker step. So you can just activate your Rogue's Passage at instant speed, and man, that's such a blowout. We have the Scrylands. Scrylands could be the Surveil lands because they have the basic land types, but again, budget mana base. I love the Scrylands. You know, I remember when they first came out, very fond of them. They do intertap, but they will scry 1, which is very important when you're trying to manipulate the top card of your library. You're trying to get a good spell to exile and play from exile so you can trigger your commander. So big fan of those. Temple of Malice, Temple of Triumph, Temple of Scrylands. Love that. We're running the reveal lands. You just reveal a land in your hand that has a basic land type, and these come in untapped. But even if they come in tapped, still good to get your colors. We're running the check lands, which if you have a basic land type of one of their colors, they will come in untapped. But like I said, even if they come in untapped, you know, still a good use. We have the filter lands, the signet lands is what I call these. You know, they'll just filter in. The filter land, the actual filter lands, they add a colorless, or you can add any combination of their colors. So these are good when you're trying to cast your commander on 3. You don't have our colors. The 1 cycle land we have in the deck, you know, cycling 2, it's a good use of your firebending mana when you don't need the land drop. But if you do need the land drop, this also has the basic land types. So this cycle hasn't been finished for the enemy pairs, but this is the only one running in the deck. It adds red and green. Quarry Mountain adds red and white. Quarry Mountain Monastery, this is a land that will help us exile the top card of our library and play it. So, and it comes into play untapped if I control plains. Never going to have an island. But, you know, it's good just to have that in the late game if you're out of gas in your mana base. We're running 3 mountains. We have Windbrisk Heights. This is a hideaway land. Hideaway is casting a spell from exile, so that can definitely come in handy. We're running 4 additional plains. We have Castle Locthwain. This enters tapped unless you control a swamp. But in the late game, you'll just be able to draw cards and you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. But normally, if you're using this for that mode, you're not going to have that many cards in your hand. And then to pair with the Castle Locthwain, we have 4 swamps. So that's the deck tech. I hope you enjoyed. If there's anything else you would add to Fire Lord Zuko, let me know down in the comments. Make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel. I want to start doing more Magic deck techs. I really love Magic. I want it to be a bigger part of my YouTube channel. So leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe. Until next time, this is Cream. See you next time.